computer. So welcome everyone to another episode of Productive Agent, a podcast that is powered by Aubrey Home Loans. And today we have a special guest, a good friend of mine that I've known for quite some time. Actually knew her mom, Sandra. But our guest today is Launie Belnap. Welcome to the show, Launie.
Hey, thanks, Rob.
Yeah, my pleasure for having you. So that's true. So I did know Sandra. I knew Sandra when I met her when I first moved to Utah. She was an agent at Wardley, and I was new to Utah. I'd been in the business a couple of years, but I was so new to Utah. She was always kind to me and never forgot that. And that always meant a lot to me. And of course, apples don't fall far from trees. So Lonnie is a very kind and generous person too. So, but anyway, so tell us about yourself. So how long have you been in real estate? How'd you get started and all that kind of stuff?
Well, like you mentioned, Mom also obviously introduced the real estate
Right.
topic to me. I grew up with it. It was back in the years that if you had to talk to a client, you stopped at a
phone booth.
payphone and you
Right.
deposited a nickel, and then it went into a dime, and then a quarter. And it went back to the paper books that you would check to see what houses were available on the market. So times
Right.
definitely have changed, but it was that long ago that actually real estate was introduced to me, and it was introduced to my mom and by my mom. And
Right.
yeah, we were actually able to do the real estate business together as a team for lots of years.
That's so
And
cool.
yeah, total an honor.
Yeah. Yeah. So I never really worked with her in a transaction, but like I said, she was always kind to me and always, always willing to help me. So that I always
Always,
remember that.
you will always remember how somebody makes you feel. So that's
Yep. And I was back in like late winter, like January, maybe through June of 1996. So that's when I met her because I moved to Utah in November of 95. When got my license. Because back then they had reciprocity. They're working on reciprocity again. So back then I only had to take 8 hours of Utah law and then take a little 40-question exam, and that was it. So, and I kicked myself for not having a broker or Florida broker license, because that would have had the same thing, Utah law on a test, and I would have had a broker in 2 states. I'm like, man. So when I was in Utah and as soon as I qualified to become a broker 3 years later, I went and got my license. So
yeah, you've been a big part of our industry.
yeah, I
Huge
don't know.
part of
Me,
our
I'm just,
industry.
and it's like people tell me that, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm just a dude that does what he does. And so, but so did you have a career before real estate or no?
I did. I was working just in the insurance industry. Medical insurance is what
I
I
see.
did. Yeah.
Got it. What did you do there? Sales? No?
Nope. Well, a little bit of sales. I probably did a little bit of everything. I worked for Intermountain, and
Okay.
I started up the Medicare program when they first originally offered it, and then they did away with it, and then they offered it back again.
Right.
But I was the beginning of those stages a long time ago.
Right.
That's what I did.
Well, I don't want to say how old I am, but I just started my Medicare on October 1st. So
Congratulations.
yeah, I got Realtor health insurance now. So best health insurance so far from what I could see, you know. So for $169 a month. So
Okay.
I mean the part A is free, but the rest of it, but all the add-ons, $169 a month. I'm like sign me up. So they have a thing called silver sneakers. So silver sneakers is like certain gyms like Cottonwood Rec Center. So when I go to renew my Cottonwood Rec Center membership card, it's now free. So
Oh, see all of the bonuses you get
yeah,
when you get
lots.
when you get older.
Right. Yeah, they're like, why not? Let's give it to them. They're not going to come. It's like, you know. So 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 you mentioned like, you were introduced to real estate when it was books, stop by a payphone to make calls. So tell us more about that. I mean, like, let's talk about some of the changes. Like, you've seen those. Like technology has obviously changed a lot, and you know, some for the better, some maybe not so much, you know. But anyway, so what do you think? What would you say is one of the biggest changes that maybe for the better?
For the better, technology is always good. You know, back in the days, somebody had to depend on you to say, hey, is this really the house for us or not for us? And they depended on you to give them a lot of education. And not saying that we still don't have to give and talk about a lot of education, because we do, it's a
Right.
process.
Just
However, I do
different
think that
education now.
technology, yeah, I do think that technology just helps a buyer to get on there and look at all of their options. And
Right.
obviously, the Salt Lake Valley has grown, right, from
Right.
the time that moms first started doing real estate to now. I mean,
Even when
look
I
at
first started.
how big it's grown. Yeah. So it just allows the buyer to look at all of their options, and it's so easy to get on and see, you know, what you can get for a price, and then to really kind of get a feel of what they really like, and it confirms what houses they want to see. So it's a good mix of going, okay, what do you like? What do you want? And it allows them to feel really confident, probably quicker to know exactly what they really, really like. So they can look online and look at 20 homes and then go, I only want to see 3 or 4, right?
Right.
Where before, it was a matter of, hey, well, these are our options and let's go and just see them. And they didn't have the luxury of looking at on the internet. They just didn't.
Right. Yeah, you had to.
Now they
Yeah,
do. It's
you had to show
huge.
them 20 houses to figure out what they didn't like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned the books. So you know, when I started, that's what was it that we were had the books, and so a kind of a useless trivia. You know, we hear the word hot sheet, which is really in today's world that's just a listing alert. And so, but where the name hot sheet came from was when everything was paper and like you didn't submit a listing online, you filled out a form and somebody from the office had to take it down to the board because back then the MLS each board had its own MLS. And so so we were kind of limited, but anyway, so somebody from the office would deliver the paper listing to the MLS, and when they were there, they would because the book came out every 2 weeks, so all the new listings from yesterday, they would run them on the copy machine, and when they came off the copy machine, the pages were hot, and so that's where the name hot sheet came from. So we still use it today, even in our technology.
Yep,
We
we
call it the
do.
hot sheet. So a little useless trivia.
Oh, fun,
Yeah,
useless trivia. I love it.
yeah, fun. You know, I mean, if you're in the industry, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, it was like, you know, I mean, everything was different then. I mean, you had to do like a CMA with a book, look them up and write it down on a sheet of paper, you know,
Yeah.
which taught you how to do it. You know, a lot of agents today, in my opinion, they really don't know how to price it. I mean, they learned how to use a calculator, but they never learned to use long division, right? I mean,
Right.
you know, and
Right.
that's, you know, so where we had to learn long division because we didn't have the calculator, you know.
Yeah.
So so and then I mean also too, right? Talk about running around. I mean, you had to go get signatures. You know, I mean, that was all day affair, you know, running around town getting signatures.
Yeah. Good point there. Another just amazing technical service that we get things done so quickly with the electronic signatures, where before it was, you know, here's your copy. They were carbon copies, right?
Right. Pull
Here's
the
your
bottom one
copy.
out.
Here's the office. Here's mine.
Right.
And yeah,
And
and
then
you were running around to get signatures.
the lender wanted the ink one, you know.
Oh, yes, that's so true. It actually took a little while before lenders would allow not to have a wet signature. They had
Right.
to have,
The wet
yeah,
signature, yeah.
they'd had to have the wet signature and not just the electronic signature. So
Yeah.
we've come a long way,
Oh yeah.
and it definitely saves time.
Well,
Yeah.
and you presented your own offers to the seller.
Oh, yep. That
Yeah.
was definitely something that we did too back then.
Which you're still allowed to
I
do.
actually miss that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I actually miss that.
Yeah. Yeah. The last one I did was great. I, well, the last one where I was the buyer's agent, you know, I mean, I called the listing agent up. She was a mature, experienced agent. I said, hey, I'd love to present an offer to your seller. I said, it'll be a professional experience. She's like, bring it on. She goes, I've been around a long time. Let's do it. So I went
Mhm.
in and, I handed her a copy of an offer. And then I sat there and I started telling the sellers about my buyer. And my buyers had a child that was deaf. And so the house was at the back end of a cul-de-sac. And then it even had the catwalk or whatever you want to call it between the two houses that walk you into, um, which is Brighton Park, which is where the football fields and everything and all the middle school and everything. And so I'm explaining this to the seller, and the woman, the wife, she's like, oh, this house will be so perfect for them, right? And and I just looked at the listing agent. She knew I just sold the house, That's
Yeah.
like we just closed the deal. But I went in, I got it signed. They did a counter offer. The only thing they countered was a day we had a date like one day off. So they signed it. I left there with the signed offer or signed counter offer and signed seller disclosures, ran around the corner where my buyers were. They lived in a duplex around the corner, got them to sign the counter offer. They had them sign the disclosures. I ran right back around. So within like an hour, I had a wet signature signed with seller disclosures all completed. That was
That's
fun.
awesome. Yep.
I miss those days.
I miss those days too.
But you get nervous when some of the agents they come in and sometimes they're like, "Oh, you jackass," Some of them just don't know how to do it. So for anybody listening, so I always ask, where's that rule written that you're allowed to present your offer? So do you know where that rule is? No, yay, nay.
No, where's the rule?
It's in the MLS because that rule is because you're a member of that MLS. So my guess is if you're not a member of that MLS, then there's no rule. But because you remember, a lot of people don't realize that before back at one time there was no buyer agency. I don't know if did you
Uh-huh.
start after that or did
I
you start?
started after that, but I know the history of it. We all
Right,
represented the seller. Yeah.
right. Everybody in the board represented the seller as a sub agent of the listing broker.
Yeah.
And so, and the theory was that the seller says, well, I'm paying, therefore you represent me, and then buyer agency permeated its way into the markets and different places. It kind of like today, people, they can make a change. Like the NAR can send out a notice and say, as of this date, here's the new change, and everybody's updated. And then, but back then, I mean, it took months, for things to move around the country, with letters and mail. I mean, we didn't even really have fax machines. They were just starting to come about, but they weren't any good. You couldn't read half the time. So it was that curly thermal paper, you know,
Yeah.
that weren't any good for contracts. So, so what's the thing you like most about this industry?
The people. Yeah. My favorite scenario of a client relationship is first time home buyer.
Yeah, I love
I
them.
love
I
that.
love them too.
Yeah, I love everybody. I love
Right.
all clients, of course, but some of my favorites are the first time home buyer
Yep.
situations. Yeah,
Yeah, you become a part of their history. You know,
you do.
the second and
You
third
know,
home is not as like cool,
it
but that
is, and you're
first
still
one,
part of that history. And what's
right,
even cooler is if you can be that, first, second, third, and you
right,
continue that history with them. That's very honorable. But that first time, you start the beginning of a lot of the time their life. They're just their
right.
new chapters of life, and
Yep.
sometimes they're their very first chapters of life, which is really cool. And it's
Yeah.
fun to watch
Together, if
everybody
it's a
just
newly
grow.
married, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not
Because it,
always. I mean, my one of my first one of my favorite stories is I had a buyer, and he moved around because he worked for the forest department, and he would he never settled down. And he's like, my dream was always to have a house. And he was in his 50s and he bought his first home. But I remember handing him his first set of keys, and I'm like, you get to open the door now, it's yours. And he sobbed. It made me sob because,
Right.
but
Right.
anyway, I mean, he was 50, but sometimes it's just a matter of that magical, just first time home purchase. It's
Right.
pretty awesome.
Yeah. I don't think I've had a 50-year-old first time home buyer. I've had them older than kids, but
Yeah.
they were always my favorite too. And I remember there was one instance where I met a gal. I met her. He was an over the road truck driver. So I met her at the house, and it was a nice home too, multi-level, but it was kind of newish, and, had the manicured lawn, the white vinyl fence. Vinyl hadn't been out that much. So it just had that real clean, tight look. And the mother came to meet her there. And I remember the mother just like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. She hadn't seen the house yet, and, God, I mean, I almost get teary eyed telling the story, and it's just like, but I got to be there. I got to witness that, and it's like, the part of their family history.
Yep.
So that's so cool,
Yep.
Yeah, I've always loved that, you know, and, some people don't like them, well, I mean, for a couple reasons. One, they can be a little more work, but I don't think they're that much more work if you actually take the time in the beginning to teach them. Then it flows pretty smooth, and they tend to be a lower price range. So, so some people shy away from them.
Not me. I actually,
No, I love
that's
them.
probably what gravitates me to them, is it's all about an experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
For me.
Yeah,
So
it is the experience. And yeah, people remember how they made you feel. What's that saying? Something about, I forget what it is.
yeah, people will never forget how you make them feel.
Something like that, right? Yeah. And the other
Always.
one is people, they want to know that you care before they care what you know.
Hmm.
And I've always liked that one too.
I
That's
like
so
that
true.
one too. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
You know, so yeah, so like an ideal client is just obviously somebody with 800 FICO scores, 20% down. No, I'm kidding. So, you know, but actually they're some of the harder ones, because some of the ones that are like overqualified, they think they're entitled to all your commission, you know. So some, not all of them, but you get it.
I get it.
Where the first time buyers are like, they're just more grateful, I think. They have more of a gratitude. Yeah. So what would you say, um, something if you could change something in our industry, what would it be?
If I could change something in the industry, gosh, that's a really hard one, because I actually think our industry runs really smoothly and there's a lot of positives. I don't know if there's a lot of negatives, as far as, um, going back. I kind of miss, this is something that I would change. Just like you mentioned before, it was nice to present offers. I think
Right.
that our industry has gotten so big now, which is needed because of the amount of homes and things out there. We definitely need more representation than when you and I first started in
Right.
the business. However, it has come to a point where communication is done by text. So I think we've lost a lot of that. Hey,
Right.
this is Lonnie, and the other agent on the other end, and sometimes you don't know the other person, and sometimes it's really hard to get to know them because the lack of communication has gone. And that's probably the downfall of technology, is it's just not a call, it's more of a text, and sometimes
Right.
it's really hard to have agents pick up their phones. And I think that's a sad
Right. Yeah.
time in
Texting
technology.
Yeah, texting and email has allowed part-timers to actually thrive a little longer,
Yeah.
because, that before the email and texting, I mean, I remember one time I would call this guy every day and he wouldn't call me back till 5 o'clock. And then I finally realized he had a job during the day. He's
Yeah.
like, well, I have a job. I'm like, I do too, and it's called real estate, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think but I'm glad that he at least called you back, because
Right.
there's some agents that don't. I think we've lost that that human touch, that, and we're dealing with big time purchases. And so
Yeah.
sometimes I think that human touch is really necessary.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The idea, I'm like, look, I mean, a cash offer with no conditions is, you got a buyer agency 3 pages, you got buyer due diligence 2 pages, you got a FOIA protection, you got a wire fraud. So that's 7 pages. Then you have a 7-page REPSI. Then you have a 14-page. So that's 14 page. Then you have a 14-page seller disclosure. So now we're up to 28 pages, and that's not counting the title report and all that. And that's just a cash offer.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and I tell agents, I'm like, what specifically causes you to believe that we can have a 35, 40-page document transaction going on and you can handle that in a text message? I'm like, hello. The other thing I think one of the technology has done, they call it the Apple effect. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where, I mean, have you ever actually read the terms of service on an app you downloaded, or did you
Nope.
go zing and hit enter,
Yeah.
Right. So they call that the Apple effect, and which is dangerous in real estate
Yes.
because people are signing things without really reading them. There was a guy in Europe that did an experiment one time, and he gave away a free phone app. And in the terms of service, you agreed to clean like 10 public toilets in Europe, nobody read it. They just agreed to do it. And so, when I would meet with a young first time buyer, I mean, I literally walked them through a reps, the purchase contract. I would go through it section by section, and I pay a lot of emphasis to section 3 and section 8, section 3 being, settlement, closing, and possession. And then section 8, all the conditions, and so, and I would do that for 2 reasons. One is, I didn't want the first time they saw a contract is when they fell in love with a house. And now I'm going to pull out all these documents and make them sign them. So I wanted them to be a little more comfortable with it. But 2, and I wanted them to learn the contract when they weren't nervous about a house.
Mm-hmm.
They were just more in a controlled environment. And so, and because I had a broker one time, his name was Jeff Summers. In fact, that was the broker I had when I worked with Sandra. And he was an attorney, and he was our branch broker. But he taught me, and you've heard me say it many, many, many times, he's the one that taught me always pretend you're in court answering the judge.
Mm-hmm.
So, I always learned to think that way. And so that stuck with me. And, so I use that as if I ever got drug into court and they say, well, explain it to me. And I'm like, Judge, I promise you, I explained it to them to where they were nodding out. It was, I explained this document to them, And so anyway, so that's one of the things, like you said, though, we can get it signed quickly, but it has a downside as well.
Well, that you bring up a very good point. It's very true. Yes.
And what's interesting too is, where the buyer can look at all the homes online, but the research shows that the number one thing a buyer wants from a real estate professional is actually to help them find the right home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, I mean, it's almost doesn't make sense. But, but after you've worked with enough buyers, you're like, well, it makes total sense.
It does.
Because they're shopping, they're typing in their wish list, and we take them out. We look at their behavior. Did you like this? Do you like that? And then, usually the first go around is kind of filtering out things they really don't like. They're getting used to floor plans. And then once you narrow in on one, then, us as agents, we go back and find, 3 or 4 or 5 of them, dwindle it down and go out and find them something they like, But even though they have access to everything.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And so the number one thing is finding the right house. The next one is, the next 2, I forget the order, but it's like the paperwork and negotiation. And so I thought, which means if you're doing marketing, right, hey, we'll help you find the right home and negotiate you the best deal, right? There's if
Yeah.
if that's what they want, make that your message, right? So what are your thoughts on the current market situation now?
It's been hard. I think it's hard right now for first-time home buyers to get
Sure.
started. Just the income levels that people are making right now and the interest rates and pricing of homes, it certainly makes it hard, but somewhere I suggest that you still start somewhere. You can still start, even if it's, a 2-bedroom little condo,
Right.
start somewhere because that somewhere gets you further ahead later.
Right.
So somewhere
Yeah,
you
it's
just
money in the
need to
bank.
start. It is.
It's money in the bank for sure. Yeah, and that's I tell that too. You got to get in. You got to get in.
You do.
You know. And like a lot of them are like, well, I'm waiting for rates to come down. So I ran the numbers. Based on a $500,000 home, which it's hard to fathom that a $500,000 is your new starter home.
Hmm.
Gosh, I was teaching a CE class. I was telling a couple stories. Like time I sold a house in 7th East, I think we listed it for 79.9. For a house. I mean, now it's like that's almost your earnest money. And so, but oh, where's it going? Where's it going with that? Squirrel. I lost it. What happened? But anyway, it's back to they're waiting for rates to come down to save money. So in a $500,000 house, they may save around $300 a month if rates were to drop 1%. But the problem is, you know, the values are increasing 4, 5, 6, 8% in some places, right? And so let's get real conservative and say ours only goes up 3%, which I know it's higher than that, but $500,000 house going up 3%, that's $15,000. So you're trying to, you're waiting to save $3,600 in payment, but you're leaving another $11,400 on the table.
Yeah.
And so, the smart money says get in now and then get tomorrow's rates tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because if you wait, you're going to have a lower rate, but the property is going to cost more money. And if rates go down, it's nuts. I mean, we're going to see the ridiculous period all over again.
Yeah.
God, we don't miss those days, do we?
No, that was very hard
Right.
for
Well, it's hard on
everybody.
buyers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even a listing agent, you get 30 offers.
Yep.
I mean, you spend 3 days just negotiating and, just
Yep.
processing offers. I mean, you got nothing done for 3 days.
Yep. It was a hard time.
Yeah. And then the poor buyers, I mean, they were getting exhausted, third or fourth house. And I'd see agents post, we've lost out on 12 houses. And I'm like, I just want to call them up and say, my God, you need some training. I mean, you should lose, I think you should lose a couple because you have to get your buyer convinced that what you're telling them is that real, because they're trained not to make a full price. The old joke. Oh, I don't make full price offers. Oh, good, because we're going over. It's
And
like,
that's funny. Yeah.
you know,
Even in
so
today's market, there's still, I mean, it obviously is not the multiple offers like we were seeing
right,
before, but if something is priced right in the right price bracket in the right area that people really want,
right.
you still can see multiple offers. You're not still getting like
You're not getting
5,
40.
10, 25, 40 offers, but sometimes you still do
Yeah,
have to
two
go
or
up against
three.
multiple
Yeah,
offers.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
competitive to say the least.
Yeah. Not always, but I mean, you still run across it from occasion.
Yeah, the last 2 loans I closed, both were competitive offers.
Yeah, it's still happening.
And I call the listing agent up and help sell it.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference when you have a lender to do that.
Well, I don't
Huge.
wait for them to call me. I call them.
Yeah, it's huge.
Right. So doesn't hurt.
No, it makes the other agent on the other side feel safe,
Right. That we got things under control and
comfortable
we're
that
rocking and
things
rolling.
are going to go through smoothly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's how I feel about it. Because I
Yeah.
mean, every once in a while you had a lender call you as a listing agent,
Yep.
and I let them know. So yeah, that never hurts.
No,
So
it helps.
yeah. And, so rates obviously. So I mean, and I just posted today on Facebook about, I saw an article. I get an email from Goldman Sachs, 10,000 small business. I'm an alumni there. And so, and there's a little article from the Deseret, whatever, and they were talking about how home prices have come down. And you read the article and it says the median home price is like $10,000 lower. And I posted, I'm like, you know, the falling of the median home price has nothing to do with the home values going. They're not connected. The median price is just simply the middle price that's sold. So
Right.
when the market was jumping and we had, 8,000 or whatever, maybe 1,500 houses selling in a month, and then it slows down to maybe 1,000 homes in a month, well, the median price is going to be different. And the odds are great it's going to be lower because
Yeah.
you might not have the multi-million-dollar houses on the end or whatever. It's just going to be a lower number. But it has nothing to do with home values. And the media pushes that. It just drives me insane. Values aren't going down. In order for values to go down, we'd have to have more sellers than buyers. And
Yeah.
and that ain't happening in the next 5 years.
No. Yeah. We still have a shortage. I do think right now that depending if you are going up against another offer or not, that a seller usually is negotiable as far as closing costs or something like that. But
Right.
generally, there's not a ton of negotiation, but sometimes there's still a little. There's
Yeah,
still
a
a
little
little,
bit.
as long as
Right.
you're not going up against multiple
Yeah,
offers.
they got multiple offers. Concessions just went out the window.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen when rates drop. I mean, one, you're
Yeah.
going to see a surge of buyers rush into the market. So the first thing to go away is concessions, which is kind of a hidden price increase for the seller.
Right.
And then you'll see actual price increases, so, within 30 days of a price drop, you're going to see you're going to see prices starting to really move, I mean, they're moving now, they're kind of inching up, but I mean, I think you'll see some spikes if we get a rate drop,
Yeah.
and that's why the Fed's doing everything in their power to keep it where they are, because they painted themselves in a corner. They're stuck. So, and we have to live with it.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how it goes. Yeah. So back to what did we say? So when I asked the question, if you could change anything, so it was that communication, right? Getting agents
Yep.
to talk. Yeah. Where you actually called the agent to present an offer. You met them at the seller's house. You presented the offer in front of the listing agent, and everybody was working because, I know the buyer's agent represents the buyer and the listing agent represents the seller, but we all have a common goal.
Well, I think that
Close.
texting or emails can be misinterpreted, right?
Sure.
Where, yeah, I think it's really important that if you're not presenting your offer to the seller themselves, that you are presenting it to
The
the
agent.
listing agent. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Because I always say it's the tonality of the reader, not the tonality of the writer. Because,
that's correct.
and I have a sense of humor that's not always appreciated by everyone. And so sometimes I say things and, doesn't come out the way I meant it to come out.
Right.
I'm like, I thought it was funny. Lo and behold, I insulted the whole gene pool, you know. So that's why, I mean, you really got to be good with the emojis and all that, right? The
Right.
emoticons, right? I mean, it helps to, kind of give a little tonality to the message.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. I remember one time I posted on Facebook, I had so I posted a picture, or no, I forget. Yeah, it was a picture. I said, I found a new way to increase your business. It'll add a couple deals a year, easy. It's something I forget, but no, it wasn't a picture. So all this, so I went on and on and on about how this new simple solution, and then I put a little web page up, and I put a bit.ly short link, And so when they clicked on it, a page opened up. It just said, "Answer your damn phone." So it's like,
That's funny.
you know, so I go on and on and on about how this is going to improve your business, you know. So yeah, the whole thing was just answer your phone.
Yep. There's a
So
lot of truth to that.
yeah, I mean, that's how I became successful as an agent. I became successful as a broker, and now my success in the mortgage business, you know,
Yeah.
by answering my phone,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
because
huge.
you know, like I had a guy, I called him and he's like, text, you know, I'm like, how can I help you? I said, well, can you call me? He goes, well, you know, you know, well, what do you need? I'm like, I need you to call me. You know, I'm like, regardless of what he said, the answer was call me, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care if you don't want to talk. This is like, if I wanted to text, I would have texted you. But apparently I called and I was, you know, silly me, the idea that I was going to like talk to somebody on the other end. Right.
Yep.
So where would you say like your business comes from? How do you like, do you do any kind of marketing? I mean, you know, whatever, you know, tell us about that.
Yeah. So I've actually been in the business for about 28 years. And I am blessed just with a lot of referrals and a lot of repeat clients.
Right.
I don't do a lot of marketing. I do some, but I don't do a lot as far as I market obviously my listings and things like that. But as far as growth for me,
Right.
my business comes from a lot of repeat and or referrals.
Okay. Do you do any marketing to your database or anything?
Once a year, they get a calendar from me. I talk to them. I'm in contact with a lot of people because I really care about my clients. I do.
Right.
So I have a motto that says, changing lives one house at a time. And I do believe that we all have an impact. And one of my impacts that I say that I contribute to society is I do have the honor of helping them buy or sell their home.
Right.
And I care. I truly, truly care about my clients, and I would do anything to help them be successful in their goals that they want to accomplish,
Right.
whether that means to buy or sell. And their goal becomes my goal, and I would do anything to make sure that that goal gets accomplished.
Right.
So it is important to me.
Well, and that's why you get repeat business, you know, because I mean, once people realize, you know, and I used to teach as agents, I'm like, look, if you're sitting on a listing appointment and that seller believes that from the bottom of their heart that you care about their best interest, they're going to crawl across the table and sign the documents. I mean, it's the way it is. They don't, you know, as long as they believe, you know, if they can feel it that you care.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's law too, right? Utah law says you have a fiduciary duty to your client, putting their needs above your own.
Yeah.
You know, that's a pretty tall order,
Yep.
you know, and then the code of ethics layers on top of that.
Yep.
So, so, so do you prefer buyers or sellers? I mean, I guess that's what do you think?
I don't have a preference. I don't care.
No?
Either one. Either
Yeah.
one works.
Yeah. I think buyers are a little more fun or can be.
It depends on the market,
Right. Yeah.
for
No,
sure.
but the idea of going out shopping is kind of fun, right?
It is, for sure.
You know, sellers can be a little more, um, you know, I don't know if it's the word is pure. I mean, purely means that, but a little more confrontational because, you know, if it hasn't sold, they're looking directly to you. Where if a buyer hasn't found a house, they're not blaming you. But if it's not sold, they're blaming you. So, you know, that's always an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, but there's
Mm.
usually a reason why it hasn't sold, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, again, it's just a process of education,
Right.
um, expectations,
Right.
and walking
Ooh,
through that until you get a successful
price.
sell.
Yeah.
So, it can be price, it can be, you have to listen to feedback. I
Right.
mean, Rob, you've always taught me there's three things that you can control in when
Right.
you take a listing, and that is price and feedback
The price condition
and
and God, what's the third one?
marketing.
Yeah, that's
It's
it.
marketing. And
Exposure,
so if
right?
you're doing
Price
all of those
exposure,
three things,
right?
yeah, and if you are doing those three things, the three things that you can control, it is going to sell.
Right. As long as you take care of all your job, because we
Yep.
don't have control over the market. We don't have control over the motivation of the competition. I mean, we don't have control over interest rates. I mean, we, so I saw a good quote the other day, and I forget what it was. I posted it, but I think it was like, control your controllables or something like that. You can't control everything, but the ones you can, be on it,
Yep,
which is
for
what
sure.
we were just talking about.
Yes.
Handle that. Get on top of the things you can control.
Yep.
You
And
know,
sometimes things just take patience,
right,
again, it just depends on the market. But yeah, those three things are critical when taking a listing. And if you do control those and it's educate and it will sell.
right.
You have to have those three things done.
Yep. And it's funny so the biggest complaint of sellers about their agent is communication,
Mhm.
you know, and so, like I used to work expired listings, and it was always, I haven't seen my agent since he signed a contract, and I'm like, it's been 3 months, and that's like, well, that's why they're not here getting an extension, and
Yeah,
so
that's not okay.
no, yeah, and I remember I showed a house one time. I left my card, and I had a call from the seller. Seller's like, I'm firing my agent. Will you list my house? I'm like, hell yeah. I mean, that only happened once, but that was cool. So yeah, you don't get that often. So,
Yeah.
and that's always a delicate situation where they're still listed, but you're like, okay, look, and my script to that is, when people call you up and they have a agency contract, I mean, we're allowed to talk to them if they initiate.
Right.
And my script is, just so we're clear that I am a realtor, we have uh, a code of ethics, and our code of ethics says I'm not allowed to approach you. So we're in agreement, and or we understand that you approach me first. Is that correct? And I get them to say yes. So if I ever got in called to court, I can recite the script, and I can call them as a witness and say, do you remember? Oh yeah, I remember. Because if I
Right.
recite the script, I'll remember.
Right.
And that's back to that Jeff Summers training, always pretend you're in court.
Yep.
And I've never been to court as an agent. I mean, well, yeah, I was actually a witness for a seller, but it wasn't a transaction related. I was involved in two commission arbitrations, and we won both times. I've had a bunch of threats, you know, I'm just going to get my lawyer. Oh, great. Well, give me their number. I'll call them right now. You know,
That's funny.
yeah. And they're like, they think it's a threat. And I'm like, come on. I've been in real estate for how many years? What do you think? You're the first guy that's ever threatened a lawyer? Give me their number. Because unless they're a real estate attorney, the odds are great they know less than either one of us.
Right.
They really do. I had a buddy, he was a patent attorney. He goes, I'm an attorney, a patent attorney, but an attorney nonetheless. But he would call me for real estate questions, you know,
Yep. Yep.
I mean, because he knows his lane, and
Right.
if I got a patent question, he's the guy I'm going to. Well, in fact, I
Yep.
had to go to him one time because I posted a picture on a website that I didn't have permission, it said copyright or whatever down in the bottom of the picture. I should at least crop that out. It's like,
That's funny, Rob.
but it cost me uh $1,200, settlement plus $200 my attorney. So it was a really cool picture, and I was kind of bummed because I liked
What
it.
picture was it?
It was a picture of a windshield in the front looking forward, and then it had the rear view mirror looking behind, And so that was just the two things you could see, what was in the mirror and what was in the windshield. And so, and it had to do with, I forget, I think, it was talking about looking ahead. There's a reason why the windshield's big, because the future is bigger than your past. The rear view mirror is small because your past is small. Let's look at, so that was kind of how So I was writing the article, something about that. It was a blog post. And then I saw that picture. I'm like, oh, this is it, you know, and I found it online too, without the trademark in there, whatever copyright. So if I had it without the copyright, I could have got away with a little more. I mean, it could have cost me less money, but the photo had copyright right in it. And because there's attorneys that scour the internet looking for that, they find copyright pictures and then they search for the owner, and it's an easy money. And they sent me a FedEx package. I called my attorney. He goes, well, he says, our goal now is just to minimize the damage. It's like, we're not winning anything, so I'm like, all right, well, oh well.
Huh.
What do
Lesson
you do?
learned.
Yeah. And that's something agents don't realize. The only two things in our MLS that are copyrighted are pictures and the comments. The public remarks, they're copyrighted. So you can use, the rest is mostly public record, the size and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Of course.
Right. But agents don't realize that. They're like, they just post somebody else's pictures. And I mean, you could do that with IDX. That's a separate license. So,
Right.
which if their listings in the MLS, they've agreed to that license. So what am I not asking you?
I think we've pretty much covered it.
So if somebody were either starting in a business or say maybe restarting their business has been kind of down, and they want to like jumpstart, what would your advice be?
Consistency, patience,
Yeah.
Talk to people, let them know. Some people don't even know that you might
Right.
even be in business. So make it known, whoever you talk to. I mean, just let
Right.
people know.
Right. Wear a name
And
badge.
wear a name badge, talk. It doesn't matter where you're at, talk,
Right.
That's what I would just tell them. Just talk, and consistency. Consistency always pays off, but you've got to be consistent. And the
Right.
business isn't going to come to you unless you've earned that. You
Or
have
pay a
to,
lot of money.
you do have to go out and look for business and build relationships.
Right.
This is a relationship industry.
Yeah. It's not like any other sales. It's like, I mean, you sell shoes online, whatever. I mean, if you buy a bad pair of flip-flops, it's like, oh, well, you buy a bad house. Well, no, you remember that for years. And
Yep.
so, and it's just the way it is, and so people have to trust you with that transaction.
Yep. And make sure you have your team of experts that help you be successful. So your
Right.
title companies, your
Lenders,
lender,
right.
your lender is a huge key. You know
Right.
that. And inspectors. Yep.
And any other, kind of more, those are the main ones that like every buyer transaction. But I mean, we get involved in, sometimes you got to know the right electrician, the right plumber, the right structural engineer. I mean, the right roofer. I mean, we don't use them on every transaction unless the home inspector calls it out, and then we bring somebody in deeper. But you have to have that Rolodex, I mean,
absolutely. And you've done your research that you know that they're good contacts, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's, and I, that, because some people, some of the, I would say the more corporate brands, if you will, where they train their agents to give out 3 names, I'm like,
yep.
Are you really doing your buyer a favor by giving them 3 home inspectors' names and letting them do research? 3 lenders. I mean, they don't know what they're looking for.
Right.
And so, I never subscribe to that principle, never subscribe to it as a way that you're actually helping them. I know why they teach that, because it's back to that. They're protecting their butts in a court of law.
Yeah.
And I would not be afraid to go in a court of law with somebody that says, this is my preferred home inspector. This is somebody I use. And I let them know. I'm like, look, this inspector and we're friends. I don't use them because we're friends. I just been working with them for almost 20 years. So therefore we became friends. When you work with somebody for 20 years, we're friends.
Yeah.
I mean, if not, we're not going to I mean, because if you don't become friends, you're not going to last 20 years working
Right.
together. I mean, it's just
Right.
that simple. Like you and I, how long have we known each other? I mean,
A long time.
yeah, we don't have to go there, right? So I told a guy one time, I had a client that I helped 3 generations in that family. And he goes, you know what that means? And he says, I said, yeah, I'm a good age. And he said, no, you're getting old. So
That's funny.
I'm like, I'm going to stick with mine, I just thought, and I was like, damn, that hurt, So, so, so consistency, I like how you said that, and patience. Yeah, that is so true. I mean, you have to be consistent, and we get, the shiny object syndrome. We keep like every new thing that comes down the road, that like we're chasing it. And you just have to get something, and the thing is they all work lead generation wise if you do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're
Yep.
not going to follow up on leads and stay with it, you're like, I love when I hear, well, I tried that once. Well, once, how about trying it for a year, you
Yep.
know, and see if it works, because it's I call it the accumulation effect. Like the program we were talking about, you might get a couple leads your first month, and then the next month you might get 3 or 4 leads, but then after 6 or 7 months, next thing you know, you're sitting on 30, 40 leads maybe. And then at that point, well, then they start coming out of the other end of the funnel, and then you start closing the deal a month, So,
Yep.
but that's back to consistency and patience.
Yeah.
That's happen overnight.
No, it doesn't.
And you have to work it.
It's a process.
Right. Yep. So systems are key.
Hmm.
So, but I like what you said too. Surround yourself with, I call it the power team. You know, I always say you want to be the dumbest guy in the room. And they go, well, what do you mean by that? That's like, well, that's because I have really smart people, So I have a person in the title that knows more about title than me. I have a person, a lender that knows more about lending than me,
Yep.
a home inspector that knows more about it than me, So you want to have that kind of, uh, when you have that, I mean, our job is obviously we're not the dumbest person in the room, but we're the choir director, and so we know the music and we know how to direct the choir or the orchestra, but we're not a first chair violin, you know,
Yep.
but we know how to get that violin player to play. I mean, that's what people need to understand, as an agent. The other one I like to talk to agents about it, and I talked about this in the CE class today. Let's say you got a seller that they're listed at 500, you know, and it'll probably sell for 475. But the seller won't budge, but they have a problem. And if they don't sell their house, they could be financially damaged. And so if an agent calls you up and says, hey, what will your seller take? Right? Or if they said, will your seller take 475? I mean, so if I said, hey, look, I can get it done at 475, and then they present the offer and I get it signed by the seller. So the question is, did I violate my fiduciary duty? It's an interesting question because I'm not supposed to say anything that could weaken my client's position. But the whole market knows it's not going to sell for 500 grand. The only one that doesn't know is the seller, or the only one that refuses to know is the seller. So then the question is, did I violate my fiduciary, or did I actually do my job and sell the house? Tough balance question. I don't know the answer. I don't know if there is a right answer to that, but because your first duty that they hired you to do was to sell the house, and if they're going to be in trouble, then I got them out of trouble. So I don't believe I violated my duty, but I mean, it can be argued either way.
Hmm.
So I like presenting that kind of thinking to newer agents because it's like, when you have two pros, what your client wants and needs. I know my client wants and needs. Let's you and I get on the phone. We don't, we're obviously not going to make price negotiations, but we can hammer out all the little details. That time it doesn't work for me because my client has this going on. They're going to need they're going to need a 3 or 4 day possession. I mean, we can negotiate that on our own and then, get the price and go back and meet with our clients and, hammer it out and then get them to make the one or two final decisions. But I mean, I think agents really need to learn that rather than go back and forth with 15 addenda. I mean, that's like, you're not doing anybody any favors. I mean, the 15 addenda, you could have 2 phone calls and cured all that,
Well, I think it's okay to, what you do know about your clients is to say, hey, I know that they need to have an extra week after closing, or
Right.
like those things you should know and be talking to your seller about, so
Or
that
the
when
other
you
agent, yeah,
call, or when somebody does want to write an offer, then you're able to already be prepared with
right,
the seller has allowed you to basically say, right,
right.
and or their
Well, and that's
needs.
not weakening their
So,
position either. You
no,
can't do anything to weaken their position. So,
right.
negotiating dates and some minor terms and whatnot, I mean, like, yeah, get the agents talking, hammer that out and go back and get it signed, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, that's their decision on price. So I would
Yep.
always say, like the way would answer that question is if I were listed at 500 and I know they had to sell it, they're going to be in financial problems. And somebody said, well, they take 475. The way I answer it is I'll present that with a very positive attitude,
Right.
So, in other words, I mean, and then you go back to the seller and, the joke we used to say during the crash, well, that's kind of a low offer, isn't it? Well, maybe we should look at the other offer. Oh, we got another offer? No, focus. It's like,
That's funny.
there is no other offer. Focus. You know, I mean, it's like that was our joke, So we had a bunch of those jokes, called a title company up. Hey, I'm coming in tomorrow. Don't pretend you haven't seen me in a while. It's like, so yeah, the jokes of the marketplace, right? So
Right.
so anyway, well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
So I enjoy this. I mean, like I said, Lonnie and I have been friends for a long time. So, I mean, like I said, I knew her mom, Sandra, and I've worked with Lonnie forever, seemed like. Where, so after Wardley, where did you guys go? Weren't you like
I didn't,
Stonebrook?
Realty Executives.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I was there too. Yeah.
Yep.
And then they sold.
Yep.
Yeah, I love the Fillmores. Were you there? You were there with the Fillmores, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's where I was too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. So I don't remember you from there. I don't remember. You didn't work in the office much back then, did you?
Yeah, I did. Actually yeah. Did you say that you got licensed in 95 or 96?
In Utah, I moved to Utah in November '95. Got my license like late December and started at Woodley. I basically said I'll start January 2 of '96.
When did you go to Realty Executives?
In '98,
Hmm.
I was there '98 to 2004.
Okay, so that because mom moved over before you then, and so did I. Because
Before,
we were at Realty Executives by 1996.
got it. Yeah, I don't remember it from there. And so,
Mhm.
but I was there. Yeah, when I was on 33rd South. Were you down on the other building on Highland Drive? Yeah.
No, we moved to them when they opened up there, but they
Oh, the
were
new build.
only
But
at 300 for a while.
no, they had another building on Highland Drive on the corner where the car wash was before they moved into that. But then they shut both of those offices down and moved into that new building.
They didn't just have 33rd open and then they opened the new one on Highland.
Well, 33rd, and then there was a building on Highland, not the one
Right.
the new building, the one that was on the corner is like a 4-story brick building. They had an office in there, and then they closed both of those and moved into the new one
Gotcha.
on
So
Highland on Highland Drive.
we were on 33rd and then we went to the Highland Drive one, the new office.
Yeah, I was on 33rd. I was with Doug Caputo, and
Mhm.
Brenda was the branch manager.
Yep, she was.
Yeah. So, but over at the one on 64th and Highland, so in that one hallway, so let me give you a who's list of of the agents that were in that hallway. So you have Brady Long, who went on to find, he was the founder and owner of Equity. You have Tony Ketterlins, who's now the CEO of Equity. You had Boy Brown, who owns 3 Keller Williams branches here in Salt Lake County. You had Brad Olson, he's got his own brokerage. You have myself. You had George Mars, who has the most successful Century 21 franchise in history. We were all literally in the same hallway over there, in that one back corner.
Lots of good energy there, learning from
Yeah,
the best from each other.
yeah. I mean, we pushed everybody, and I mean, that's the way it was.
Yeah,
So, but anyway,
that's pretty
yeah,
amazing.
I'm
That's
surprised I don't
powerful.
remember you guys from there. But I mean, did Sandra have an office there?
Mhm.
God, where was it?
Um,
I would have been in the northwest corner.
are you talking about 33rd or are you talking about the
No,
64th?
64th and Highland. Yeah, I didn't have an office on 33rd.
Yeah, she only had an office, I think, on 33rd and not 64th.
That's why I don't
So
remember.
opposite, yeah.
Right. Yeah, Doug Caputo had an office. So I remember it was Doyle Johnson and Doug Caputo. They had an office. And I had just got involved in Mike Ferry coaching, found out Robert Fillmore was a Mike Ferry coach. And, and I was involved with the stand-up desk and the 2 phones. And Brenda was walking me through. And Doug Caputo and Doyle Johnson shared an office, but it had 2 glass walls. And I saw Doug Caputo had like a drafting table and he had 2 phones. And I said, does that guy prospect with 2 phones? And she said, yeah. And it was like 2 cubicles right outside. I said, I'll take this cubicle right here. I parked right
You
outside that guy's
wanted to
office.
hear what he did and how he
Right.
did it.
Yep. I parked right outside his office.
That's awesome.
I was there for a few months and then we all moved up to 64th and Highland.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my experience there. So
Yeah, very fun. Those were the good old days.
oh yeah. And like I said, I mean, if you took the number of offices that came in, Century 21, Equity, Keller Williams, Aubrey and Associates, Brad Olson. I mean, 5 major, well, 4, and I was the smallest one with 100 agents, besides Brad, So, but anyway, okay. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Miss Lonnie, for being here. It's an absolute pleasure to hang out with you. You're such a class act. I mean, I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and so anyway, so thanks for joining us. And I want to say thanks for those that are listening. Again, this is Productive Agent Podcast powered by Aubrey Home Loans. I hope you learned some things today, folks. So see ya.
Thanks, Rob. Bye-bye.